The state of Texas has banned the sale of smokable forms of hemp, but state law has not changed what's legal to possess. So what happens if Austin police find you with hemp flower or concentrate? They're going to ask for the packaging. That's the answer. But before we hear from a senior police official explaining why, I have to give a little bit of background for those who are new to this. Cannabis is the plant. Hemp and marijuana are legal categories. So hemp is cannabis with less than 0.3% Delta-9 THC. Marijuana is cannabis with more than 0.3% Delta-9 THC. And Delta-9 THC is the main psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, but it's not the only one. Most Delta-9 actually starts out as something called THCA, which is not psychoactive by itself, but when THCA is heated or smoked, it converts to Delta-9. So new state regulations governing retail locations and manufacturers of hemp products in Texas do count THCA as Delta-9. Now, these are not laws, they are regulations, and they essentially say THCA is 88% Delta-9 for the purposes of determining if something is legal to sell or manufacture. So as of March 31st, basically all smokable forms of cannabis, you can't be sold or made in Texas anymore, but you can still make and sell gummies if you meet these more stringent guidelines. Now, people might still be able to order smokable forms of cannabis from outside of Texas, or certainly if you leave Texas and buy it and bring it back here, that's another thing that people are doing as well. You can check out the description down below for a video where I interview a Texas cannabis lawyer about the legality of that. What happens, though, if you are in Austin and police find you with this smokable cannabis, smokable hemp? How do they know it's hemp and not cannabis? Well, I spoke to Austin Police Lieutenant Patrick Eastlick. He oversees the APD's Tactical Intelligence Division. And I started by asking him that very question. How can they tell if it's hemp or marijuana?
So it's a very tricky thing. So first off, no one, an officer or even anyone highly trained can tell the difference between the plant material to be able to distinguish between hemp and marijuana, THC. And that's because it's, like you said, it's based on the concentration of the THC in the plant. So just by looking at it, you're not going to be able to determine that. What we do is we have policies in place to address that. One of the biggest things is hemp products when they are purchased from distributors or throughout the state or even out of state, there's required packaging. So the packaging has to be a certain way. It has to, have a batch number on it, as well as the date of the batch, the product name, the name of the manufacturer. Usually it will say that it has less than 0.0 or 0.3% THC concentration. So it's the labeling is the easiest way for officers to be able to distinguish between the two. So it's why it's very important for folks who have legal hemp to have the packaging with them when they're out and about. So that way an officer can determine that. If an officer isn't, say they keep it in some other type of container that is not properly labeled to be able to distinguish the two, what will happen is it will be seized by the officer and submitted into evidence. That doesn't mean they're going to be charged for it because, again, we don't have the mechanisms in place. Last time I checked with our forensics labs to be able to test potency of THC in these substances, but it is going to be seized. So they're going to lose out on however much they paid for it.
Okay. And what happens at that point? Do they recover it at a later date? Are they charged with any crimes? How does it proceed from there? I guess it must vary a lot on the circumstances, right?
Yes. A lot of it's going to be on the circumstances. So we'll just say an individual has a very small amount, less than a few grams, a couple of grams. So it's a misdemeanor amount. Based on our policies, they're going to be seized and it'll be submitted for disposal. Now, they won't be charged for it unless it's related to a felony narcotics investigation or some sort of other violent crime nexus. Is how we do it. But for just a small amount of marijuana or hemp that we're not able to determine, they're just going to be seized and disposed of through our policies and procedures.
So basically, if an Austin police officer finds you with hemp in your possession, unless you have the packaging, the original packaging that says this is hemp, it will be treated as, it will be seized and destroyed essentially.
Yes, it'll be treated as if it was marijuana, and then seized and destroyed.
Is it the Austin Police Department's understanding that hemp flower is legal to possess in Texas for, smoking purposes, whatever?
Yes, I mean, as long as it is under the 0.3% THC, it is legal to have. And again, that's why I go back to have the packaging, to be able to show that, to prove that to the officer that, hey, this is legal hemp through the state, and it's gone through the proper testing procedures through the state boards to be able to have.
Okay. Does the volume that the person is possessing play a role at all in how the officer acts? I mean, if you're mainly focused on distributors, for example, I mean, I don't know how does that work?
Right. Yeah. So potentially, if someone were to have boxes and boxes of it, where it could potentially be a felony amount of it, of marijuana or hemp, of marijuana, then yes, it would. My narcotics support unit detectives would probably get notified, paged out to address it, and then looking at other factors, person's involvement, their understanding, their reasons for having it, their, the interviews that we have, be able to do an investigation on whether this is going to be legal or illegal substance. But most of the time, like I said, a lot of the new rules that are going in place really concentrate and are really geared towards the distributors, the shops, as well as the manufacturers and the growers, and all that testing to show that their substance is legal hemp is run through the state itself.
Right. And I want to ask you more about that. But another thought occurred to me, which is I'm sure that there indeed are arrests made where it is not hemp and it is marijuana. Does, or maybe not arrests, that's my question really is, does the Austin Police Department arrest people for small amounts of marijuana if you're not even really able to tell the difference in the field?
No.
Okay.
The only time, well, I will say potentially, they might be if they are, like I said, if it's a felony amount. Misdemeanor amount, no, unless there might be some violent crime investigation attached to it. There is the potential they could be arrested for marijuana. Okay. And again, that's also, and it's not just based on the observation of the officer of seeing the material, the plant material, but it's also going to be questions they ask to be able to figure out, if it is actual marijuana or if it's going to be hemp.
Okay, right. For example, if they're carrying a label that says, California marijuana dispensary, and it says, 0.808% Delta 9 THC, that could be used potentially as evidence that it is marijuana, presumably, right?
Potentially, yes. But again, it goes back to, and based on our policies, there has to be another nexus to it. If it's just a small amount, most likely they're not going to be charged with it. I can't say 100% of the time they're not going to be charged with it, but based on our policies, it has to be related to a felony narcotics investigation or a violent felony.
So if that's the case then, and these Department of State Health Services rules, as you said, really are targeted at retailers, distributors, and manufacturers, and the law itself has not changed. After March 31st, if you stop someone and they have hemp flower, but it is the label, instead of saying Texas, it says this is from North Carolina, but it's still hemp flower. And a lot of these products, when they're shipped or ordered online, they actually come with little letters or notices to law enforcement. If someone has that package, would it be treated in the same way? Like, look, officer, this is legal hemp flower.
As long as it falls within our guidelines of what is, with the state's guidelines of what is legal hemp, then yes, it'd be fine.
Okay, well, that answers the question then. Do you know, now this is the Austin Police Department policy. I wouldn't ask you to speak for police departments statewide, but is it your understanding that other police departments have pretty similar policies, or is Austin Police Department less common in the way it approaches this?
I haven't reached out to other departments to see how what their policies are, so I really couldn't answer to that. How it would be handled even in Round Rock or cities around us, I wouldn't be able to answer to that.
Now, when we look ahead to these new Department of State Health Services rules around hemp, Is this going to affect Austin Police Department policies, or what you do on a day-to-day basis, and with enforcing law or enforcing regulations against retailers? Are you going to be doing any of that kind of thing, or is that solely the purview of the Department of State Health Services?
Dealing with retailers, we haven't addressed yet. If complaints come in revolving around a certain retailer who is believed to be violating the law, we would coordinate with the state because they have those agencies in place to do the regulations and do the checks. So we'd be working with them to make sure that they are in compliance with the state law.
Right. I had one attorney talk to me about this, and she sort of, the way she explained it was, when it comes to slow level marijuana possession, law enforcement has much more, I forget the term she used, but basically bigger fish to fry. And I wonder, what is the main thing that you're dealing with on a daily basis that are those bigger fish to fry, so to speak?
Well, right now, we still have an issue with fentanyl in the being distributed through the city, through the state as well. We still have overdoses that are coming in. We are still investigating those overdose deaths, as well as other substance, methamphetamine, still the harder drugs, methamphetamine, cocaine. The more potent drugs are still an issue that we're addressing in our investigations.
Are there any aspects of hemp where, be it like derivatives of hemp that are more potent, where you've encountered issues or you've had to do any, police work? Or is it pretty much really primarily focused on those hard drugs?
A lot of it's the hard drugs. Now, we have had investigations where individuals were selling edibles and different derivatives of that, of THC, from out of state, selling them not through the regulatory means, kind of their own black market sales, where we've had to address those when those complaints come in. But that's been few and far between. There's only been a few of those cases that have come up. And not a lot of it is dealing with the hemp portion of it. It's typically going to be higher concentrations of THC.
When you need to figure out what those higher concentrations of delta-9 THC are, or if you say there is a felony level of possession and you need to test it, how do you do that? Do you send that to DPS? Does it go to a third-party lab? What's the process there? And do you know if is it heated before testing? I know that's a controversial thing because, of course, that would increase the delta-9 THC count.
Right. I don't know what their testing procedures are, but we have utilized DPS at least on one occasion that I know of since I've been here. And it was a larger investigation where it was a individual distributing THC edibles and different products. And so to be able to determine the concentration of that stuff, we did utilize DPS in that one. But it's very few and far between with those cases that we go through DPS.
Is there anything else that I should ask you before I wrap things up? Is there any areas that I'm just not seeing or thinking about? Happens all the time.
No, I mean, it is, with the regulations that are going through, it is going to impact, a lot of the retailers that are doing it the correct way. And, it just reinforces the rules that the state has set up. Other than that, I mean, I can't think of a whole lot more that you could have asked. It's a different area. Our steps will be the same that we've utilized before. When talking about enforcing, I say enforcing, when we encounter a flowering plant, whether it's marijuana or hemp. As of right now, I don't see our policies changing. That could change in the future. But as of right now, again, if an officer finds something that he suspects could be marijuana and there's nothing to be able to point or evidence to show that that it is hemp and legal, it's going to be seized and disposed of through our processes.
Okay. Actually, it raises one last question I'd like to ask you, which is, do you expect that the additional fees being charged to retailers, a lot of people who expect that there will be fewer retailers, and that also that these products, the smokable products, which account for approximately half the market by many estimates, that all of this together may in fact help support the black market and organized crime.
There's always that chance. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. And if we do see a rise of that, we can hopefully address it appropriately. But there's always that possibility. You look at other states that have legalized full legalization of marijuana, but based on the fees and the taxes, they do still have a black market on it. There is that potential, and we just have to address it when it comes about.
Thank you for watching this. Go to KUT.org for more hemp coverage or just local news coverage in Austin. And if you want to hear that interview with Andrea Steele, check out the description below. I also have an interview down there that I'll put with someone who's a general manager of a hemp business about what these new regulations mean for them. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.